The broadcast is
Everybody. This is Joanne Wood, and my three dogs, who have been sedated with treats and told to be quiet, and I've shut the blinds, so I'm hoping they will not accompany this webinar. There is Pork Chop on the left, and Sophie in the middle, and my newest little guy, Rufus, on the right. You see that he's in a crate. There's a reason for that. So welcome to our May and final webinar of 2018. I'm Joanne Wood, and my email is on this slide, and it's on a couple of other slides, so that if you have any questions that I don't answer during the webinar, you can always shoot me an email, and I'll be glad to follow through with that. My trusty companion and boss, Joy Hatcher, is moderating today, and so she'll be looking for your questions. If you have any, you can raise your hand, or you can use the question or chat feature, as she said, and we hope you'll participate. I'll give you a heads up. There are two sections in the webinar today where I really would love to have some feedback from you. One is ideas for teaching about Jimmy Carter, because we're going to talk about that. And the other is ideas that for how you end the year in social studies in particular, and how you make that dynamic. So if you have any great ideas, this is a good opportunity to share those. So I'm going to dive right in and keep moving because I don't want to go over our time limit. So here's our agenda. We're going to unpack some standards, the ones that address Jimmy Carter. I'll share some resources with you, including some new ones that I've just discovered and I'm really excited about. I hope you will be too. And then we'll talk about finishing the year strong, and that's our common message from the Georgia Department of Ed. So, and then of course, at any time throughout the webinar, if you have questions, jump in. We hope you're following us on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. I won't belabor this because I mention it every single month, but that is the best way to find out the latest information the most quickly, is to be following us. We post regularly. Our Instagram account is a teacher takeover account. If you want to share your social studies activities online, I'm sure, Joy, that we'll have those application up for next year soon,
in
right?
July. It goes up in July, and they will know when the application is up because they'll be
By following us.
following.
Yeah. Okay, so that way, if you fill out an application, a different teacher is hosts the Instagram account every week. So maybe it'll be you. So follow us on that. If you're not a member of our EdWeb community, we really wish you would join. That's a great place to share ideas. It's packed with resources. Even as recently as a couple of weeks ago, I had someone email me and say, how do we get to the resource library again? Because that is where all the goodies, including this PowerPoint with all the links in it, the webinar archives from all of the webinars we've done all this year and all last year, all of that is posted in our EdWeb PLC online, which is a free website for teachers. So if you want more information about how to join that, just shoot me an email. And again, there's my email on the bottom of this page. When you join, you'll want to explore our space, the community toolbox, the resource library, the discussion forum, and the webinar archives are all things I just mentioned. I've already posted this PowerPoint that I'm using today in the resource library. I've also posted one of the resources I'll be sharing later with you about Jimmy Carter in the resource library. So if you want the goodies, you'll want to be a member of that community. So I hope that you are. And last call for proposals for Georgia Council for Social Studies Conference this fall in October. The theme is 1918 to 1968 to 2018, a century of conflict and change. That covers a lot, covers some of the things we teach in second grade, of course. So we hope that you'll put together your great ideas and do a proposal to present at the conference. The deadline for proposals is this Friday. So May 4th is the deadline, and the link is right there that you can fill out the proposal form. So last call, we hope we see some good elementary sessions proposed. So our EQ is how can we teach with inquiry about Jimmy Carter? and how can social studies swirl? So we use the same variation of this EQ all year long, depending on the different topics that we teach in second grade social studies, and they're all Georgia focused, of course. And swirl, of course, refers to the literacy, how we express our thinking in literacy. So I'll talk more about that as we go. So the next step I want to do is to unpack or unfold the standard on Jimmy Carter. We've been doing this all year long. This is the one that deals with him. We want to ask ourselves, what is the standard uh, asking students to be able to do? And hold on, sorry. We divide that up into content knowledge. So they need to know what these words mean, these terms mean, and they need to know the content surrounding those so that those words have context. New words that we've added this time include Jimmy Carter, governor, president, and human rights. We have already talked about leadership when we talked about Juliette Gordon Low and others whom we've taught about this year. But Jimmy Carter kind of brings it to another level into an elected office. Then we want to be able to have students describe the life and contributions of Jimmy Carter. So of course they need to know what we mean by that. And this all takes place in the 20th century. So if you're keeping a timeline in your classroom, this is the section of the timeline you're going to be focusing on. Another standard we teach always with the history standard is the geography standard. And that is actually meant to teach students that where someone is from or where they're located during their lifetime and their activities makes a difference. It helps shape what they do. Certainly the fact that Jimmy Carter was from the South had a great influence on what he believed, how he led, and what he did, what he was able to do in his life. So we want to be able to tie Jimmy Carter to his place in history as well as his time in history. And again, that takes place in the geography of Georgia. So if you're teaching Jimmy Carter, you want to include using a map and actually have an activity that we use a very specific map related to Jimmy Carter in a few minutes that I'll share with you. And then the third standard, these are all tied together, kind of woven together, is the one on citizenship traits. And certainly Jimmy Carter is an exemplar of many of these traits: honesty, dependability, and so on. We focus on leadership with him, but leaders convey these attributes. So we want to make sure that we are reinforcing those all year long, that we look for them in the lives of historical figures as well as fictional characters, people in the school, people in the classroom. There are all kinds of ways to reinforce and extend students' knowledge of these citizenship traits. So those are our standards. We've kind of unpacked those. We've done our welcome, and I know I'm kind of zipping through here because I really want to spend time on the resources and on our GaDOE focus. So I'll pause just for a moment and ask if anyone has any questions. Joy?
I don't see any. I'm going to double check, make sure nobody's got their hands raised. I don't see that either. And
okay, well, thank you. Remember to chime in if you do, because we definitely don't want this to be a monologue. All right, so we asked earlier, how can we teach with inquiry about Jimmy Carter, and how can social studies swirl? And we've got our inquiry cycle or inquiry graphic on the left. Everything surrounds a question. So we want to ask really good questions. We want our students to ask really good questions about Jimmy Carter. And they've had enough practice by now in the year to be good at that. Hold on, I'm going too ahead of myself. On the right, in case you haven't seen it before, this is our graphic of swirl. And this is what inquiry looks like in the classroom. We want to see students doing all these things on the outer circle: speaking, writing, illustrating, reading, and listening. Any opportunities that they have to do that. And all of those are the way they show what they're thinking. So if they're not doing all those things, then we don't know what they're thinking, and we're not sure that they're mastering the standard. So we want to make sure that we see evidence of swirling in the classroom. So some of the resources that are already posted, and I see that I have a typo in the word Carter. Sorry about that, y'all. You don't know how many times I proved this. But resources for teaching about Jimmy Carter I pulled these from the sample units that are already posted on the second grade page, and I've given you the link to that page on this slide. And I just pulled a couple of things. There are more than this in there. One is a visual organizer, a graphic organizer that you can use for students as they're using a variety of sources. They can look for the pieces that go in the different parts of this graphic organizer on the left, comparing their lives to Jimmy Carter's life and so on. I told you that I would mention a mapping activity. This is a map of the Carter family farm outside of Plains, Georgia in Archery. And you can have them use a map, and you can see that there's a grid on it. So they're beginning that process of learning to match the letter and the number on a grid and locate things on a map. And then we start working with timelines when we work with the life of Jimmy Carter over on the right. This excerpt I pulled on the right, the order that his pivotal events kind of happened in his life. So all of those and more activities are located online on the second grade page. So we hope you're already aware of those and already using those. And I'm excited to share with you some new resources to me. I invited Marley Usry, who is our virtual education program specialist at the Jimmy Carter National Historic Site. This is a picture of Marley. She wasn't able to be with us in person, but she did send her picture so that I could let you see who's sharing with us. She's actually put together a little booklet, and I've shown you 3 clips from it. Each page is a different slide. And I'm actually going to show you, I'm going to go out of my PowerPoint for just a moment and show you that folder will look like this. And I'm hoping you guys can see that. Joy, you'll have to let me know if you see it. It comes with 13 slides. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay. And if you open them all at once, I selected them all out of the folder, 13 slides, and then I selected them all and then opened the first one. And that way it flips it up like a book and you can go through it like a little slideshow. So it's packed with primary sources, all kinds of photographs about Jimmy Carter, about his childhood, about his parents, about his town, his home, and so on. It has some narration to go with it. Marley's written this so that when she's working with second graders, she can use it. So it pulls together some other resources that are found at the Jimmy Carter site, but that aren't always second grade friendly. So she's made it second grade friendly for us, and she's been very generous about sharing that with us. And I have now posted the whole book online. So I think, I know that I would use this in my classroom if I were a second grade teacher. So I hope that you will too. And I'm sure you'll probably think of all kinds of ways to use it. So if you think of something fun that kids will have enjoyed, or you do use that book with your class, share with us how you did it, and so that others can learn from it. So that's one resource I wanted to share with you. And she shared some other resources with us that I'll go to in just a minute on the next slide. But I also want to mention it's not always easy to find children's books for second graders about Jimmy Carter. However, we have something with Jimmy Carter that we don't have with many of our other Georgia figures, and that is he has written a children's book himself. It's not about him. It's not an autobiography, but it's a nice story. It's an imaginary story, and it actually relates well with the character traits because the characters in the story exhibit some good character traits. So his story is called The Little Baby Snooglefleeger, and I just want to mention that to you. The book is still in print. It's illustrated by his daughter, Amy Carter, and I think it's appropriate, just right for second grade. So, and it really does have a good moral lesson to it too. So I hope that you'll check that out if you haven't seen it before. One of the resources I'm going to show you in just a minute relates to that, which is why I wanted to make sure I talked about the book first. Marley also shared this updated web page of resources that she has developed, and I've shared the links, 2 different links here. One is to the main page, the jimmycartereducation.com page, and the other is to the multimedia page. And I'm actually going to take us to both of those during our session right now. So I'm going to escape for just a moment and get us there. Here's the Jimmy Carter National Historic Site Education Program. This is where Marley's done a great deal of work. There's kind of some cover information and information about booking a field trip. Now, not all of us can drive all the way to Plains with our students, although those of you who are surrounding it, how lucky are you? Because it is an amazing experience if you've not been there. You, at least as a teacher, ought to go just because you'll have a good time. I want to point out a couple of things in the More section. If you click on the curriculum link, you will get to some grade-specific lessons and activities, all very, very kid-friendly. She has the curriculum, some of which we've had before in the past, but some of which has been newly created. She's got it chunked here into part 1 and part 2 and some research resources. So all kinds of things here, ranging from very, very simple word find kind of activities to more inquiry-based activities and more hands-on activities. So I won't go into those, and I did not upload them because I felt like you can get to this site now that I pointed it out, and you can explore those on your own. And then the other thing I wanted to mention to you is the multimedia section. I had not seen any of these, or maybe one of these before, and I wanted to point out a couple of things. One is the last couple of links are to a video of Jimmy Carter himself reading the little baby Snugglephaedra aloud. And he talks about why he wanted to write this book. And it grew out of a story he used to tell his kids when they were small. And that Amy, how proud he was of Amy for doing the illustrations to go with it. And then they even had the little baby Snugglephaedra with Spanish subtitles. So that's a resource I wasn't even aware of. All of these videos, I did not watch every single one of them. And of course, before you use them in your classroom, you'll want to watch them and make sure that they're appropriate. But I did watch the first one, the Boyhood Farm Peanuts video. It is excellent, really kid-friendly, shows them peanuts from the ground, shows them how to boil peanuts, and talks to them about how Jimmy Carter used to bag up the boiled peanuts and drive them into town and sell them at the railroad tracks and make a nickel a bag, $1 a day, which was what a grown man could earn in at that time. So really engaging and age-appropriate video clip, and it's short enough so that you could watch it and stop and discuss, and watch it and stop and discuss, and it would make a lovely little lesson. And then I'm sure that many of these others are just as perfect for what you might need. So I'll let you explore those on your own, but I just wanted to make sure you understood where those were so that you can find them on your own.
I wonder if it would be appropriate to share boiled peanuts while you're doing that video, unless you have a child that has a peanut allergy. And
I was going to say, except for the nut allergies, yeah.
If you plan on doing that, please let me know, because I want some boiled peanuts.
I do too. I love boiled peanuts, actually, and probably Georgians can be divided into two groups: those who love them and those who don't. But I think it's a wonderful treat from the past. So watching the video is lovely. So I'm going to jump back to my PowerPoint and pick it up there. So I just want to make sure you saw this great wealth of resources, that even though we don't have lots and lots and lots of hands-on books, we have lots of resources online. And we thank Marley for putting those together and for sharing them so generously. Another couple of sites that you can go to for resources are the Jimmy Carter National Historic Site. I actually have both of these pulled up on my browser as well. So let me just jump there very quickly so you can see. This is the actual National Park Service National Historic Site in Plains. And they have I went to the photo gallery, and that's what the page I landed on, because I wanted you to see. They have Boyhood Farm photos here, watercolors, peanut postcard contest winners. I know that they've had the peanut postcard contest every October on the president's birthday. And it's fun to see what other kids have submitted for their entries, and that might get your own kids interested in the fall in October. His birthday, I think, is on October 1st, and you might get them interested in entering that contest. Also, the animals at the Jimmy Carter Boyhood Home, they're fun, great pictures. So I think your students would enjoy examining those photos and using them to find out what they can learn about Jimmy Carter from them. Another resource related to Georgia that has a Jimmy Carter element to it is at the virtual field trip section of the Georgia Public Broadcasting website. These are actually made for 8th graders, but I've watched the video on Jimmy Carter there. There's nothing inappropriate for young students to see. It's longer than I would show a 2nd grader, so I would use it in segments. But I wanted to just show you that in addition to the other topics that you see me scrolling past, there is a virtual field trip on Jimmy Carter, the very last one, and it comes with a user guide, so you could download that, preview the video yourself, and then watch a segment if you wanted to. Now that I've found the ones that Marley has posted, I think that's probably where I would spend most of my time, but it never hurts to have an extra resource. So any questions or comments about the Jimmy Carter resources I've shared so far? Or any that you may have?
I'm not seeing any.
Okay, we have a quiet crowd today, so don't be shy. Join in. I had a couple of ideas. One was there is a sculpture of Jimmy Carter posted on the Capitol grounds in Atlanta, and you might have students compare a sculpture of Jimmy Carter and this image of Jimmy Carter helping build homes in 2014. What's the same? What's different? What kind of image do you get? What kind of story do these images tell? You could compare the sculpture of Jimmy Carter on the Capitol grounds with the recently unveiled one of Martin Luther King. And you could also throw in there Juliet Gordon Lowe, whose sculpture we looked at last week, that's in Savannah, and have them compare and contrast, do a 3-way kind of compare and contrast. There are all kinds of ways that you could spin those images into having students dig deeper into what they can learn from those kind of images. So just a thought that came to mind. And again, don't let me hog the conversation. If you have ideas for teaching about Jimmy Carter, I hope you'll chime in or go online afterwards and talk to us in the PLC on EdWeb.
I just want to point out, Joanne, that I walked past that Jimmy Carter sculpture yesterday at the Capitol, and one of the very striking things that you wouldn't notice just from looking at that image that would just be good for teachers to know is its size. If you look at the sculptures of the other governors on the Capitol grounds, they're huge. They're 15 feet tall, 10 feet tall. The Jimmy Carter statue is very modest in comparison. So it was just,
I think that
last week.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I think that's why I would want to, if you had 3 or 4 different pictures of sculptures from the grounds that you could compare and contrast, I think it would tell you a lot about Jimmy Carter. So, and about how the artist chose to convey him. So lots to learn about there. So thank you for bringing that up. I noticed that as well. Okay. All right, we're going to dive into our last big topic, which is finishing the year strong and this is our common message that we're sharing with all of our folks. We know this time of year is pretty frenetic. You're about to dive into your last month. There are choices you can make about how you'll spend this time. We're urging everyone, and actually we borrowed this image, I think, from our virtual specialist, Angie Battle from 4th grade. Stay focused and finish strong. She's sending that message out. So we're borrowing her message. One of the things we want to mention is there are some good tips for finishing strong out there. One is a couple of Edutopia blogs are out there, and one that we wanted to share with you is called Finishing Strong. Um, and it's very thoughtful. I think you'll get something from it. He points out in his this is Larry Ferlazzo, and he points out in his blog that we have a remembering self and an experiencing self. So when we do an activity in our classrooms, that we experience that, and then when we have time to look back on it, we are looking from a different vantage point. And what that tells us is that what we do this last few weeks of school really makes a difference in how students see the year, how they see the class, how they see you, how they see social studies. And so we want the ending to be important. And we have a couple of ideas about making that ending strong. So I'll leave that tip for you to read the blog to get more detail. But one of the other blogs that this same author wrote, he wrote for edweek.org, he came up with he surveyed a bunch of teachers to see how they end the year, and he sorted all of the activities they talked about into 3 categories. One is teachers who really just want to placate and vegetate. One, teachers who want to celebrate and appreciate, and one, teachers who want to evaluate and agitate, or activities that do those things. So for placating and vegetating, a lot of times, too often maybe, we see these things where we show whole movies, we play meaningless games, we just let kids talk, we do final countdowns, we do a lot of things that don't really have any learning involved in them or engagement involved in them. For celebrating and appreciating, we might do things like a learning tournament where we pull together content information from the whole year and review it, renew it, refresh it, let kids leave with it on their minds. We might do an awards ceremony, not the official school-wide or district awards ceremony, but the one for your class. We might do some evaluating and agitating. We might challenge them to do something they're interested in, turn the tables, let them choose what they're going to teach about. You could let them grade you. You could let them teach a topic based on their interests, not your interests. So if you read this blog, I think you'll have even more ideas to kind of generate. And we're going to kind of share some of the ideas that he shared. And then I'm hoping that if you're out there and have another great idea, you'll share as well. So in that, we want to focus on the last 2 categories, back on that slide. Number 2 and number 3 are the ones we really want to focus on. So celebrate and appreciate, having a celebratory lunch or a breakfast, maybe with a Georgia theme, because everything we do is Georgia. There could be all kinds of fun ways to do this with Georgia decorations and Georgia foods and Georgia songs, many of the things we've talked about this year. You could have some kind of culminating contest, ball game, tournament, Jeopardy, all those kinds of things. Award ceremony for everyone. And you could choose, some could be funny, some could be more earnest, and you would strategically do that so that you give funny ones to people who would appreciate and enjoy funny ones, not to people who might feel targeted. What I used to like to do was have my kids reflect back on their top 10 from the year, and they would nominate all kinds of activities that we had done throughout the year, and we would jot them all over the board, and then the kids would rank them by their top 10, and we would vote. And then they might have their own personal top 10 that would be different. Maybe I'd probably have them do their personal top 10 first in their notebooks and then share with the whole class. It's a good way to kind of remind them of what they've learned. We always really, really enjoyed that. Some other ways you can have them evaluate themselves or the year. They could create a metaphor or simile by filling in the blanks. I am like a blank because blank. Maybe I'm like Georgia because blank. I'm different from Georgia because blank. You could find some ways to give a twist to it. Talk about summer reading, what they might be reading about, other interests that they might be pursuing in the summer, talking about those things, letting them explore and report on those things. Evaluating the teacher a second grade appropriate way. They could mark a scale of 1 to 5 or something like that, regarding what they most love that you did, what you might what suggestions they might give you for making a lesson or a topic even better, which person they enjoyed learning most about. There are all kinds of things that specifically tie to our social studies in second grade that you could have them evaluate and share back. It might give you a chance to sample some new technology or try some of those. We just looked at some virtual tours and some video clips. It might give you a chance to explore some of those with your class or have your students explore those. And then, as we said, maybe your virtual field trips. So those are just some ideas for ending the year strong. And I'm really interested to see if we have anybody sharing any other ideas, Joy.
I am not seeing anything.
Okay, we have a very quiet crowd today. I guess they're ready for summer already. Well, before you go to summer, we want you to have some ideas for yourself to stay energized. Try to cut your working hours. We know some of you are going to go, "Oh my gosh, do you know what who you're talking to?" But more hours is probably not going to make it better at this point. Just use the hours that you have to do good work, and then try to find some time to relax. Stay engaged in your own interests beyond teaching. I know we all have our own. Mine is reading British detective fiction and watching BBC mysteries. So,
Joanne, we do have a comment. Natalie
okay.
says maybe you can have your kids make iMovies.
I love that idea. I actually had my kids do commercials with iMovie one time, and they had to promote a particular item, and that was a wonderful, wonderful experience. So, yay! I love the iMovie idea. Thank you for chiming in.
Anna says they're researching on the regions of Georgia and having them do a presentation using Google Slides. And then
love it.
Gretna says they did an everything you need to know about second grade to share with the upcoming students the following year, and share in the grades below.
I love those ideas. Thank you. You are the best. I love those ideas. All right. Anything else, Joy?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Well, another way to stay energized is for you to contribute your ideas for other teachers to use, and you can do that in our PLC on EdWeb, or you can do that by proposing a session for the GCSS conference. So we hope that whatever way you choose to stay energized, that you do stay energized, and that's all. So this is our last webinar for the year. So in the meantime, we will still keep our EdWeb community alive and active. So we hope that you're tuning into that and will be a vocal part of that. Any last comments?
I am not seeing any, but I love a lot of those ideas, and I think I'm actually going to steal them for some high school things.
I know, I love them too. I wish I jotted them all down. I hope you remember them, Joy, so that you can remind me.
News, we recorded it. Haha.
Yay.
Gretna
Okay.
says, you guys are Energizer Bunnies. Thank you. And Becky says, thanks for a great year of webinars.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Alrighty, I'm not seeing any more comments. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.